I don't need them anymore because, because you continuously see what, what will be useful for you. And so for me, at the beginning of my studies, I took a course in another department, just as far as my own pathway went, based on my sort of foundational interests. And this semester, I'm taking a course through the doctoral consortium at Princeton University with people who are, focused on novels regionally from the same period and with a particularly useful research question for me. And so I've loved that being in the tri-state area, that your colleagues are in the English department here as well as from other institutions, and that that the more that I've built a rapport with people locally, the more I understand which other conversations in New York City and slightly farther out I want to be part of. So that's another wonderful thing. We have access to lots of different institutions as well, and in our courses here, our professors make a point of introducing us to different archives, and so the thought is there as well. Well, next time that there are grants for research travel, where can I go based on that paper that I wrote.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's hard coming at the end because everyone said a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone said in terms of finding your way. I think that what's been important for me is being as quote-unquote promiscuous as possible in terms of like my coursework. And I took a history class a few semesters ago, and right now I'm in actually a geography class with Ruthie Gilmore, and we're studying prison expansion, which is loosely related to my topic, but it's just been really helpful to be able to have the option to look at my area of inquiry from as many angles as possible. And I know I mentioned earlier about the consortium, but I want to also one of the things we were talking about in a small group earlier is about the fact that you build these great communities through the consortium, because there are students from, it's not only you going to these other universities to take classes, but there's also students that come from Columbia, NYU, to classes here, and you end up being, and I've been now in several classes with several students from different universities, and so you get to have these like ongoing conversations with people about your interests, again, like throughout the tri-state area.
I'm going to throw the next question back at you, and we'll go the other way down the line this time. But I wanted to zoom out and think about living in New York City as well, because a lot of the students who might be coming here are from somewhere else, and are thinking about not only what it's like to live in New York City, but also how to deal with the cost of living in New York City and these kinds of things. So if we could talk a little bit about that in any direction, or your history of being here, or who of you were here before you got into school, or not?
Okay. So I was here for I'm originally from Los Angeles, but I lived here 10 years before I came to the grad center, and it really was just convenient that the grad school was my top choice for a school, and it was also, I couldn't see myself going outside of New York, quite frankly. I think I'm the only person ever born in Los Angeles who never has had a driver's license. So honestly, like, the subway system is just a dream, and the fact that I can get anywhere at any time is wonderful. In terms of the cost of living, it's an ongoing struggle. I find that I'm always able to make do, but I'm also I've been moving a lot lately because the rents go up. But you find roommates, and it's one of those things. I feel like at some point, I have to be really honest, but at some point I feel like, and this sounds horrible, but you just get used to it. Like you get used to spending a ridiculous amount of money on rent, or on food or whatever, and it stops feeling as onerous, you know, which I know is a horrible thing to say, but I do feel like that's just part of the course too. So.
Mm-hmm.
So I live in Brooklyn, and I really like the experience of, you know, being in different parts of the city. And so by being here, you also can, you know, you can have a neighborhood life as well, and that can be very enriching. When I first moved to New York, I was very worried about how I was going to find the ideal living situation for me, because I didn't want to have to worry about it at all. I wanted all my energy to go into the PhD program, and of course it's a very stressful. It was for me a stressful process, thinking about the money side of it, for instance, and just the logistics of what I desired, since you do have so many options of how you will live. And what I discovered, I would say, is that you don't need to figure that out as soon as you arrive in New York, that you will have the opportunity to replace your, relocate, and that it's enough to just, experiment, come to New York, see what works for you, and that, experience, if you're not from here, will let you know which of the myriad New York experiences is viable for you, and that you will enjoy.
I have a long-standing theory that everybody's first apartment, in New York is the worst place in the entire world. And that is because if you're just moving to New York for the first time, you have no idea what constitutes a good apartment. And it is a calculus that is so complicated. If you live in a certain neighborhood that has all of the type of food you want, that can be great, but you can have one outlet, like no closets, and have a 10-block walk to the train, which can be amazing in the summer when it's beautiful, but is awful in the winter, although it wasn't so bad this time. Or sometimes, you can be really close to the train, but it's an above-ground train and it's right out your back window, and it's a pre-war building and it's beautiful, but it is completely loaded with cockroaches. Like, all of these things can happen.
Like the ad on the subway.
Right, I know.
Ad on the subway is slightly exaggerated, only slightly.
Yeah, and I think that this calculus changes for everybody, right? So like, I'm interested in having certain amenities that perhaps other people aren't. Like, I think there's like no bars really around me particularly, but I have some of the best, cheapest food in the world that I'm like deeply in love with. And so like, I think that you can't make those decisions when you don't know the city. So like, you'll have your New York City experience in the first year, and then when your lease is up and you've figured out where you actually want to live, that's when you'll start doing it. And in terms of making it work, I think that it can work because everybody is here making it work, mm-hmm. right? And in fact, not only are we making it work, but people in this program have been making it work for many years, and often on considerably less funding than many of you will come in for. So even 2 years ago, people made $18,000 for the Guaranteed Fellowship, and before that, many people came in without funding and taught 4 classes every semester to make ends meet. Many of us also teach or do other jobs. So in addition to my fellowship, which is different than yours, I also teach at Queens College 2 courses, so essentially 1 a semester. I work in the admissions office, so I probably looked at many, if not all, of your transcripts at some point to see if they are real official transcripts. If, when you applied, when you got that little check mark, sometimes that was me. And I do lay out for the school newspaper, which, I just make it pays the bills, and that's what I need. So like, people have other things that they use to make money. I applied for Starbucks once and didn't get in. I told them I didn't want to move up, but it's fine, just, I don't know if that helped. But so like, people, you can talk to any of us about it, we'll all complain about it, but you also get used to it, and we're all doing it, we all have been doing it. So I think that you can feel confident that you can, because so many of us are doing it successfully and are happy about it.
Yeah, so I went to Sarah Lawrence, as I said, so I've actually been in this area for a while. So to undermine my point about like Sarah Lawrence needing to get away, I live with 5 graduates from Sarah Lawrence in a 6-bedroom apartment in Bushwick. So you know how far from Sarah Lawrence did I actually go? My whole class moved with me. But 67 people or something. But the other thing is that I also got another job through CUNY because I'm an international, so I can't work outside CUNY. So I got a job at the College of Staten Island with the disability studies professor. She's wonderful. She works in neoliberalism in India. So I was just like, but so I just go in once a week, and she's like really nice to me. And with that and the money we get from the fellowship, I survive. But the other thing is, I wouldn't want to live in any other city in America because, for me, I'm already like not in my immediate context, which is India. And moving away from New York would mean not going to any of the protests, not going for any of the poetry readings, not going for any of the things that make New York, New York, not having my Bangladeshi local like Indian restaurant, which gives me really cheap like shrimp because they love me, and I'm Bengali, so that explains it. They don't love all Indians. But there are certain things that you like, you know, just also like being on the subway and randomly hearing many languages other than English and seeing some people who look sometimes like you. Like, these are all things which I would, like, you know, pay a lot for in America. And so for me, that really, you know, makes New York a good choice. I'm just like, yay, get to go to Little Sri Lanka after work at College of Staten Island all the time, and they're really nice. You know, just these things. Those are the things you need to choose between. Like, my cousin's at Wisconsin-Madison and lives in a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment, but the point is she's always complaining about how palak paneer, which is supposed to be green, is yellow. So then, like, you know, do you want yellow palak paneer? That's a question.
So, you know, one of the things that you may have picked up on is that at the very least, if you move to New York, you have fantastic war stories to bring to grad students and everybody else who live outside the city. But also, I think there's something to be said for learning how to make it work in a not so always fantastic situation. I have gotten really, really good at reading in very, very loud situations. You know, you figure out how many student essays you can read on a given commute. You figure out what you can or cannot read on a treadmill in a noisy gym. I almost became sick when I was reading Kant, and I drew the line there. But you know, I think that this kind of environment, it's not cushy in a lot of ways, but that's character building or something. But you know, one of the other things which has been touched on also, and I think is really important, is that when the fellowship alone can't make ends meet, New York is unique in that you're close to so many other academic institutions. So if you're at a university in sort of the middle of nowhere, you just don't have the same kinds of opportunities to, say, supplement your income with adjunct work. Here, that becomes much, much easier to do, and it's also not bad for your CV. So it's, you know, it's a trade-off, I think, and there are kind of beautiful things to figuring out how to read on the subway when somebody sitting next to you asks you about the book and you have a conversation, you know, with somebody you might not have otherwise, that becomes one of those conversations that also makes its way into your thinking and your work, and that's kind of beautiful too.
The treadmill story is great. And it makes me think of the writer John Green says he writes at the treadmill. It's where he writes all his books, is on a treadmill. John Green. It's amazing. Like, I think the only threatening part of that is the treadmill part itself. Okay, so I'd like to open this up to any questions from the crowd that we have.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
What's just been said? I'm just a first year, but I do think that one thing that hasn't been said about being in New York that I think is really important in comparison to, say, a small university town where 80% of the people there or 80% of the people you encounter are all invested in university or an academic setting. The thing about being in New York is it forces you to engage with what most of the people in the world have to engage with every day, or most people in the United States that you cannot constantly be talking in a particular way, that you must be able to adjust yourself outside of the university setting, that you can't cloister yourself away quite the same way. I think that's a really important experience as part of your journey into what will eventually often be a cloistering field.
Oh yeah, that's so important. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the constant participation in the city, that you're not just only talking about the thing that's your field and that's your only community is essential.
People just always asking, why is this important?
Yeah.
And you like really having to answer it truthfully to, normal people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to add something too. I mean, I moved here from the South with an unemployed husband and 2 dogs. And I live in the basement of emeritus professor at CUNY. Carrie got me my adjunct work, my first job at Queens College to supplement that $18,000 a year fellowship. And I've returned the favors. I've had students stay with me in between finding apartments. Like, you also have a community to support you in all of that, and work with you on that. And that really was priceless for me and precious. And I know for a fact nothing's changed in that. He's employed now, but 8 months. So.
I remember the day I moved to New York.
The fellowship is $25,000 now.
I hadn't even unloaded my stuff, and I looked down at my phone, and I had like 10 voicemails from people who wanted to come visit. And then now they had finally had a couch in New York City that they could use.
Learn to say no to those people.
Other questions? Comments? Yes.
I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about your relationship with your advisors and how that has helped you navigate your work and your programs, and how important that is, and maybe some just feedback and some tips on that.
Great question.
I can start. I've had wonderful relationships with my advisors. The Romanticists have a summer barbecue, and so we have relationships outside of the department. But also, it was said earlier that faculty here are more down to earth, I think was the language, than some faculty elsewhere. My experience has also been that they are invested in students' work in ways that I talk to other grad students elsewhere at conferences, and I talk about the kind of relationship that I have with my faculty advisors and the way in which they're so open to my work. Even if it's diverging from their own interests, they're going to do everything they can to help me develop my interests. And that's really, really important. And I've had conversations where I say something about the kind of support I get from them, and another grad student will be like, "Whoa, really?" That's not always the norm. So I've had a wonderful experience in that respect.
I think, this is on some level probably what will happen at any institution you ultimately choose, but you'll find the people who work best for you. In some cases, if it's a smaller department, if you're choosing that because there is 1 or 2 rock stars that you absolutely want to work with so that you have their name, then the relationship will, may be more complicated than that, or that's sort of less based on the actual advisement you may get. But if you're the type of person who likes somebody who is sort of quite involved and checks in with you all the time, that person is here and was probably in your field and you can have that person. Or if you're somebody who, like me, needs a little bit more distance and is okay checking in sometimes and likes people to be, less hands-on, then I found people who help me work within that but also keep me to task and make sure, if I haven't checked in a while, that they'll call me up and be like, "Paul, where are you? Have you produced anything?" And I think, again, that's, and the answer often is not enough. So I think I've found the people to help me the way I think I work best, and often to also push me to work better than I think I can work in that moment. And I think most of us up here have probably found people to do that. And I think that that means we can't put it in